Hamp, what's going on, man? I can hear you. I was going live. We are live now, actually. Just trying to start on time tonight, man.
Good, man. Sorry, I'm usually silent when I come into the chat room.
I
don't know whether you're live or not. But,
yeah, no worries, man. No, it's all good, man. I mean, no worries. Hold on for a sec here, Hamp. All right, everyone. We're live. It's Wednesday. Hey, Hamp. You know what, man? It's been a struggle for me to want a podcast on Wednesday nights because there's just a lot of games to play right now, man. Like I'm playing God of War right now, and I was just playing that before you went live. I tried to play Call of Duty Warzone 2. That actually just came out today, but they're having some server issues with download speeds or something. I went to go download, and it was like, I mean, download pretty quick to about 25%, and then it just went like the download just went not quite dead, but pretty much dead. And then I saw an alert notification saying, "Oh, hey, we're having server problems with the downloads for COD, and we're aware of the situation. We're trying to fix it and so forth." So I wasn't able to play any Warzone 2, which kind of a disappointing because I wanted to try that out before we went live, but so I really won't be able to talk about that too much. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of stuff to play right now, Hamp. It's a good time to be a gamer, man.
That's interesting. So it appears as if one of us made a good decision to walk away from COD, and one of us still insists on going down that path. So it's good to see that there's karma and that there's consequences to the choices that we make.
Exactly. Yes. Oh, yes. That's like voting for Herschel Walker. Who rambled on about vampires and something else today. I don't know what Hamp, I know we were toying around with the idea of doing a political podcast, but I'm really leaning towards doing that, man, because this is an interesting time in U.S. politics, man. This is going to go down the history books, I think. My great grandkids will learn about this stuff, or my grandkids will probably learn about this time period in U.S. politics, U.S. history. So anyhow. Yeah, but look, I want to give a big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Thanks, everyone, for coming by and hanging out with us this evening. Please do me a favor, hit that like button. I'm going to drop the link in the live chat, let everyone know that we are live. And I don't know, Hamp, this might be a pretty quick show, I think, because, one, I want to get back to playing some video games, and I'm sure our listeners want to do the same as well, although some of them may be playing video games as they listen to the show, which is awesome. But we're going to talk about the Game Awards, Hamp, because every year it never fails, and I think you talked about this or maybe tweeted this out a couple weeks ago, or was it on the show? I don't remember. You made mention of when the Game Awards announcements come out that it's going to be like people are going to find a reason to complain or something, I think you said. I don't remember. I'm totally, I may have totally butchered whatever you said, but you kind of alluded to what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that I talked about earlier this year was that, once we had the release date for God of War Ragnarok, to me, it was kind of a foregone conclusion that, and not even necessarily the matter of people complaining about it, but, I knew that the first speed bump was going to be that the gaming media was going to make time for God of War Ragnarok. Whereas I don't necessarily know that they made time for Forza Horizon 5 last year. Now, I don't, as I've gone on record as saying, I don't feel Forza Horizon 5 was deserving of Game of the Year by a long stretch of many hundreds of miles. But I think that there's a discussion to be had about the template of games that kind of get held up by the games media. Which has the knock-on effect of, kind of isolating the breadth of game that's really considered for Game of the Year awards, at least for the TGAs. I would say that's also the case for many site-level Game of the Year awards for websites. And so I think that's a discussion, that's worthy to be had. Unfortunately, the need to have that discussion often gets drowned out by the complaining about the TGAs, which is driven by console warring and brand alignment bias.
You know what I've learned about bias, man? It's bias when your team doesn't win. And it's kind of an interesting perspective. People should kind of think about that for a second. You're only calling bias when your team doesn't win, or not to get political, your party's not elected to office. But if you are elected to office or your team wins, then it's not bias. I don't know about that, man.
Right. Then the people have spoken.
Yeah, that just doesn't. Yeah, that's interesting. But so yeah, we're gonna talk about the Game Awards, and then Phil Spencer doubling down on Call of Duty. He was on he had an interview, and he talked about the Activision deal, and he's doubling down, and so we're gonna talk about that here in a little bit as well. But there's some other gaming related news that we'll talk about as well. I do want to talk about Xbox actually had a birthday of sorts, if you will. Xbox Live celebrated its 20th anniversary yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Major Nelson had tweeted that out. 20 years of Xbox Live, and Hamp. I don't know if you know this, but I was an Xbox Live beta tester. And that never gets old. Like I'm never gonna not share that here on the show. And I was on 56K at the time. I had a 56K modem. I think I had like AOL. I think that was my provider at the time. Remember the AOL discs that used to come in the mail? They used to send them to used to get them in the mail all the time. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. Yep.
Yeah. Those were the days, man. So I remember broadband. Comcast had just introduced broadband to my neighborhood, and so that was one of the things that you had to have to be an Xbox Live beta tester was a broadband connection. So I signed up for broadband internet, and I'll never forget. I filled out the form. Now I didn't make the first round of beta testers, but I did get in the second round of beta testers. And I'll never forget, I got the T-shirt, the black T-shirt in the mail, the headset, everything, the starter kit, the disc to pop in. It had Revolt, NFL Fever, and NFL Fever didn't really work well for me. It worked okay sometimes, but there were some issues with that game. But Revolt was the game that we played a lot of. I mean, I just remember staying up late. I remember the first time, just hop into a game, but like, oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me? That was kind of a cool thing at the time, that you could actually hear someone's voice and chat with them and talk about Xbox Live or what games you're playing. And so I thought it was a very revolutionary time for console gaming. And I know Sega had done online gaming previous to the Xbox, but I thought just the level of community and that level of interaction that we just really hadn't had. And again, I know PC and online play, but just the voice chat on console and what Microsoft and how Microsoft kind of took that concept and I think just took it to another level was really amazing. And there was just I met a lot of people. Some of those people I still talk to, and some Hamp, I got to be honest with you, I don't know what happened to them. You probably know what I'm talking about.
I do.
I really don't know what happened. But yeah, there were so many great memories on the early days of Xbox Live. I mean, outside of just the two games that we were playing, Revolt at the time and NFL Fever, and then I think eventually MechAssault. Was it MechAssault that came before Unreal Championship? I don't remember. I'm not sure which one came first. Maybe it was MechAssault was the other like big first party release that had multiplayer voice chat, and then I think maybe Unreal Championship after that. I could be wrong. I could have them flip flop, but look, a lot of great memories, Hamp. I mean, those are some good times, man, in gaming. Some really good times, and having that gamer tag and having a friends list and seeing developers support online multiplayer. I never forget the second Splinter Cell game, which was that Pandora Tomorrow? I gotta look this up.
I'm actually not certain. I was never a huge Splinter Cell franchise player.
Yeah, they had. Let me think. Now I'm going to Google this. What was the second Splinter Cell game? Okay, the first one released in 2002. I remember the lighting kind of being the big deal, the showpiece. And Splinter Cell debuted 2002 as an Xbox exclusive. And then over time, it made its way to the PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, and I believe the GameCube, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Pandora Tomorrow released in 2004. So that's the one that had. That's the one that had the Xbox Live. That was Xbox Live Online enabled, and I remember like that would be on the box art, like of the Xbox games that were Xbox Live enabled. It would say Live Online enabled. I remember that. But that had Spies versus Mercs, and that was actually a lot of fun because you could actually when you were a spy and you were able to grab a Merc, you could actually talk to the player in the other team. That's the only time they could hear you. So so that was a great experience. But just 20 years, man. I can't believe it, Hamp. I mean, I was 25, man. I was in my 20s. I was young. I was living recklessly on Xbox Live. But anyhow, Lloyd Metro says today's also Miyamoto's birthday. He's 70 years old. I can't believe that. It's crazy. Hamp, any thoughts on Xbox Live, man? The beta days?
No, it was a kind of a significant move for the industry, kind of moved the industry into a different place, in my opinion, kind of like I've also said, the knock-on effect that Stadia had, right? And that, other services and innovations have that come along. So, at this point, Xbox had its number of years of kind of a head start to everyone. But the PlayStation Network has kind of caught up and established, what I would call parity kind of around, in my mind, the PlayStation 4 generation. So it's been good, right? That level of service and that layer of service has been provided and is kind of now the norm. It's always interesting to me, just as kind of a sociological kind of look at behaviors on the PlayStation Network, and I always feel like it's still a leftover legacy of kind of technical debt, that because the PlayStation 3 didn't come with a pack-in bundled headset of any type. I guess maybe it came with that little earbud, but that basically no one would use. And that it just seemed, it always seemed like during the 360 era and the PlayStation 3 era, definitely, that, when you went on Xbox Live, kind of the default was for people to have mics. But when you went on the PlayStation 3 network, it was the exact opposite. And I still feel like today, I still feel like to this day, it is the norm that I go on the PlayStation Network and I just run into far more people who are not on mics than I do when I'm on Xbox Live. I think it's less impactful today because, as I've mentioned, I don't spend time in party chat, or I don't spend time in in-game chat because it's so toxic on both services. But yeah, I find that interesting.
Well, it's you want to get peak toxicity, just fire up Call of Duty and listen to the chat or the lobby, right?
Yeah, I think the Riot games give COD a run for its money, but they're both up there.
Yeah. So so no, those are, like I said, great times, man. And you're right. It's become industry standard now. With PlayStation and PlayStation kind of catching up with Xbox. So, excuse me. Sorry, I don't mean to yawn. I need some coffee. But the other thing I want to talk about too, Hamp, is I'm sorry, hold on just a sec here, Hamp. I'm checking work email. I need to close my laptop, by the way. All right. The other thing I want to talk about too, Hamp, is God of War Ragnarok. And I'm playing it, by the way, and I love this game. It's a great game. It's one of the Game of the Year nominees. But God of War Ragnarok, according to GameIndustry.biz, God of War Ragnarok launch was bigger than Call of Duty, Elden Ring, and Pokemon, according to UK box charts. Now, this is just physical copies only. So that I gotta say, Hamp, I read that title, and I was surprised. I was kind of surprised, man, that it had a bigger launch than those three games. Those are pretty big. Call of Duty and Elden Ring and those are the two top selling games right now. And I don't know which Pokemon. I'd have to read the rest of the article here. I don't know which Pokemon they're referring to. But the article says that God of War Ragnarok is UK's second biggest box game launch of the year, behind FIFA 23. That means PlayStation. By the way, World Cup starts in 4 days. I gotta look this up, Hamp. I don't know, Hamp. Do you watch the World Cup, man?
I do not. No.
All right, man.
No, sorry.
You're missing out on the good times, Hamp. November 20th. Oh, my mother's home country actually made it. They're playing Qatar. So anyhow, all right. So so the article goes on to say it means PlayStation games sold more box copies in the first week than Elden Ring, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and the previous second place Pokemon Legends. I can't pronounce this. Arceus? Is that how you pronounce it? I'm not sure. I think it's Arceus. Anyhow, so this is for the week ending November 12th. So again, this is only physical copies. They are not reporting digital copies, but yeah, I gotta say again, man, I was kind of surprised, man. I mean, I think that's pretty impressive, man. Any thoughts on this, Hamp?
Yeah, I mean, as I think you mentioned it earlier today. I mean, my hold on, wait, don't tell me, pump the brakes on it is, of course, that doesn't include digital sales. God of War obviously got a bump for collector's editions. It was kind of weird. I ordered my copy of God of War Ragnarok this week. It was weird when I ordered mine from Amazon that they had collector's editions that would have shipped to me within 24 hours. They would have been next day. But just the regular plain, box copy was delayed, which seemed to indicate more people were buying just the regular box copy. Yeah. And that surprised me because I would have thought collector's editions would have been nearly out of stock by now. So just an anecdote, but I mean, it is impressive because it's a game that's only available on one platform. That's what I'm impressed by. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, discounting the difference, but the delta between the PS5 and PS4, for the sake of brand alignment, it's available on one platform, whereas COD's available on multiple platforms. But it is only counting physical sales, and and we're certain that there were lots of Call of Duty digital sales. It would be hard for me to believe that across physical and digital, that it surpassed Call of Duty, given that Call of Duty's launch itself was one of the largest that they've had amongst the franchise. So, but still good, and still good for physical sales. The UK is always I always kind of look at it as UK sales charts to me are kind of the Golden Globes to the Oscars. I look at it as an indicator of what the NPD charts might do when those come out. But good indicator, and it'll be interesting to see how it kind of unfolds when the NPDs come out.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if it chops. Yes, Kratos does chop things. By the way, enemies with his axe. But no, I wouldn't surprise me if this game charts NPD top 5. Especially as yeah,
it'll definitely be up there, I think.
Yeah, obviously it's got a chart number 1 for PlayStation. Because this game's on PS4 and PS5. I think it looks like Sam Walton in live chat says day 1 sales was bigger than the week 1 sales of 2018 God of War, and that sold over 3 million the first week. I haven't seen that, Sam. If you could just drop a link, man, I appreciate it. I haven't read that, so it'd be interesting to hear that. But we got Gaming Forte here with us. What is up, Forte?
What's up, family?
What's going on, man? It's great to have you here, Forte. And, your timing's impeccable because we're talking about God of War sales, and you, sir, are the king of retail. And
what happened today? What happened in sales today? Did they announce something?
No, they did, but the UK physical sales came out, and
fraudulent sales. Okay, got you.
God of War had the largest or had a bigger physical release in terms of physical box sales than Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and Elden Ring and Pokemon Legends for the PlayStation.
Oh, that's cap.
Yeah, so but you work retail, so I mean you saw some of the excitement, I would say, for God of War. I know you mentioned that you guys had some collector's editions, and it sounds like a lot of people bought the physical editions at your store too, right?
Yeah. We were out. We were out of God of War, I want to say, going into Saturday. Not Saturday, going into Friday. So over, because it came out on a Wednesday. We start pre-selling it on Tuesday because of the midnight.
Yep.
We were out by Thursday night, and then we finally got restocked yesterday. So,
oh wow,
a lot of people bought that game. I do have a collector's edition at my store still. So,
which one do you have? Do you have the?
I have a Jotun.
Is that the one with the
that's the higher
record?
tier one. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get that one. I just don't have a vinyl. I don't have a record player, so.
Oh yeah. I thought about it, but then I thought about it, and I was like, nah, man, I can't do this. Can't keep doing this to myself. But no, it's so really real. I will definitely say that. But every time I hear anything about the UK and their charts, I instantly be like, It did. I guarantee they're not fibbing or anything about how it sold. It definitely sold really well. It's just when I hear that, I'm like, okay, physical sales. Okay, how small of a market is that? We know that games, especially Elden Ring didn't really pick up steam until like the second and third week. Like that game, like it sold really well when it first came out the gate for a Souls game. But its sales kind of generated over the course of that first month, where word of mouth got out there, where God of War is more of a game that people know the name of. Now the Pokemon thing, I don't know. Who knows about that? That could definitely be. I mean, they're saying it's true, but I know a lot of people buy physical copies, so that's actually pretty interesting if it actually did outsell Arceus. But we all know what's going to happen in the next tomorrow. We already know what's going to win MPD for the month of November. It's going to be the two Pokemon games that release tomorrow night at midnight. But
that's right. I forgot Pokemon's coming out tomorrow. Yeah.
Yep. The real Pokemon games are coming. Scarlet and Violet are coming. Are
you
tomorrow night?
You seeing a lot of buzz for that, Forte, at your store?
Sir, we have double the pre-orders on that game that we had of Call of Duty.
Wow.
Call of Duty was the most pre-orders we had as a store, but we ran out of. We put it this way, just the double pack alone, which is the version of the game that comes with both copies of the game, we have more of that pre-ordered than we had of just Call of Duty. And I mean, that's just my store in general, but we have more copies of the double pack than Call of Duty reserved.
Jeez, man.
So it's going to be real interesting to see how that kind of falls. But man, God of War is freaking amazing. I know we're going to talk about it, but I'm in love with that game.
Yeah, it's great, Forte. I'm having a blast, man. Like I was playing it before we went live, and I was like,
of course you were.
I was like, I don't want a podcast tonight. I just want to play God of War. I try to get on Warzone 2, and there was an issue with downloading, the update.
How is that? Did you get a chance to play it?
No. There's an issue. I fired up my PC and went to Battle.net, and it downloaded like 25% of the update, and then it was like, oh, we're having server issues with downloads for slow downloads, and we're aware of the issue. We're working on fixing it. I'm like, you know what, the hell with this? I'm just gonna go play Call of Duty, or not Call of Duty, God of War. But I'm really enjoying God of War. I just, Forte, man, it's a good game. It's a good game. I don't.
Oh,
there's very few games where I will play and look up and be like, oh my god, I've been playing this for 3 hours. Like that's this game.
It has every making. I know we're gonna talk about game of the year. It has every making of a game that could potentially win game of the year, like easily win game of the year. But it's gonna be. I didn't expect it to be as good as it. I knew it was gonna be good, and I think that was kind of a sentiment when we came back to our conversation we had about what we thought the average the aggregate score was going to be for the game. Last time we were on BRAP and did it, but I think a lot of people are kind of shocked that it's this much better. Like, the thing, we knew they were gonna like iterate on the designs, the things that kind of made the game a little bit clunky and bulky in certain places. I do think they dragged out a lot of the scenarios and stuff inside the game. I know a lot of people aren't going to care about certain parts of the game that we're not going to go into those spoiler parts about, but just the overall, their ability to tell a very unique story from different points of view is fascinating. I really enjoyed or enjoy, I'm enjoying because I didn't beat it yet, what they actually put forth in that regard. But man, I'll save the game of the year conversation till we get there, because that's going to be a real interesting conversation when we get there.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely talk.
I mean,
about
let's not get it twisted or fool ourselves. I mean, it will be game of the year.
Yeah, okay, we'll talk. We'll talk. We'll talk when we get there.
Yeah, maybe we'll see. Yeah.
We'll talk when we get there, because it's. Yeah. The only thing I will say is this game has made a very strong case why it can win game of the year. But I think game of the year is going to come down to some outside factors that they're not going to hold against Elden Ring in the end, honestly.
I admire your aspirational perspective on the on the games media, who form the bulk of the voting panel. I know there are other people on it, but I still think it's the bulk is the games media. And what it's going to come down to, it's going to come down to a consideration of who each of those games are for. And when you look at Elden Ring, at the end of the day, regardless of what people's perspectives are on the progressiveness of the Elden Ring design in comparison to other Souls games, you're going to come down on a result that game is only for certain people. And when you look at God of War, it is. It absolutely is.
No, and I don't disagree with you on that. Yeah. But I also think that is the thing that may push Elden Ring, because that's the whole thing for Elden Ring that I always thought when it first came out. The reception that game got and getting people to play that game that have no business even liking a game like that, and they were interested enough to do it. I think that is a huge counterpoint, because that like God of War is, people bought God of War, people knew God of War was going to be a good game. They didn't know it was going to be this good. Nobody was even looking for Elden Ring outside of the people that wanted to play Elden Ring. And Elden Ring got people to want to care about that game to the point where they actually care about what could happen in the future with that game. So I think that's why I say the outside influences, I believe, are the things that's going to kind of stimulate that. I would be with you 100%, because I do think recency bias. And this is, you're talking to a person that like wants God of War to win it. I want God of War because God of War is the reason I bought a PlayStation 5. It's the only PlayStation platform, game that I enjoyed the most out of all of their franchises. And the game is phenomenal. And I think it definitely should win Game of the Year. But that still doesn't take away the fact that Elden Ring did something that most games can't do. And the only other game that did something like that, where it changed its formula to the point where people that normally don't care about it actually cared, was Breath of the Wild, when they did their massive change of what they did with their game. And that just kind of opened it up for a whole bunch of other people, like open world environment people, to try a game out like that. And that's where you kind of see Elden Ring sitting at right now. Now, you could be right. It definitely should be God of War, but I think on the outside of just what's happening inside of how people, just the reception of Elden Ring, I think it's going to kind of push it forward.
Yeah.
But the thing about the reception is I believe the reception gave off a false signal because reception does not equal continued engagement. And I think there were a ton of people who onboarded into Elden Ring who also fell off and didn't stick with it.
Okay.
Because one of the polls I ran this week was, hey, how much do people do research and really know and understand what they're getting into before they buy a game? Right. And lots of people do, but there's also a surprising contingent that don't. And it was kind of amazing. I mean, and the thing that set me off on writing that poll was because I still see people to this day posting things about Death Stranding and being surprised at the content that they experience in that game. Now, I also feel like that's a bunch of people trying to talk poo-poo about Death Stranding because they're like, oh, the game doesn't have any combat. And I'm like, 7 hours into it, you should have experienced some of the combat in Death Stranding. Whether you find that combat rewarding or engaging or not, that's a discussion to have. But people who are running around saying, I'm into the game 7 hours and I haven't experienced any combat, it doesn't sound to me like you're actually playing the same game that I played.
Yeah.
So my point is that I think a lot of people onboarded into Elden Ring who didn't stick with it. You have a lot of people who onboarded into Elden Ring who came off saying it's still a Souls game. You drew analogs to games. One of the analogs I would draw to is I would draw an analog to Monster Hunter World, which kind of had the same byline in the media about it, which was this: if you're not a Monster Hunter player, this is the game that you can onboard into. And for some people that worked, but for a lot of people it didn't. It was still kind of obtuse and still kind of left them with a taste in their mouth in terms of a game design that they didn't really care for.
No, I agree, but the difference is, you're right, because that did happen with Monster Hunter, but the difference is the reception of what happened with Monster Hunter is nowhere near what happened with Elden Ring.
Yeah, so the scale's different. The awareness was higher, but I still don't think it. At the end of the day, it doesn't result in a bunch of people who stuck with Elden Ring in the same way that people will stick with God of War, and it still won't leave the mark on the consumer base that God of War will.
So real quick, I guess we'll just go ahead and we'll talk about the game awards, since we're talking about Game of the Year. Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Hamp, that the impact of God of War on just maybe the general gaming, consumer or the general gamer that game might have a little more impact than Elden Ring, maybe. For some of the reasons you mentioned, people just kind of sticking with it, or whether or not they may have not stick with Elden Ring because it's a Souls game. But I think where Elden Ring may edge out God of War for Game of the Year at the Game Awards is that the gaming media is voting. And I think that the one thing that I recall from the gaming media and some of the reviews that I read, and you had people that didn't really care for Souls games in the media that played this game and were like, this game's amazing. And I remember reading some reviews where it was like, wow, I never really liked the Souls games. I never really got into Bloodborne. They just kind of turned me off because of difficulty. But now I can't put the controller down on this game. This game's like a 9 out of 10. So I think that's going to be the one thing that, because you got to remember, like, I know that the gamers can vote, and I think they count for like 10% of the vote. But I just think that based on some of the reviews that I saw from people in the media who didn't really care for this game or didn't care for this type of game or Souls-like game, just absolutely fell in love for this game and gave it very high reviews. And, it's like, I'm not like, it wouldn't surprise me if God of War won it, but it definitely wouldn't surprise me if Elden Ring took it, And
so here's the thing I'll mention from a statistical perspective, right? So if I take all the people who actually reviewed the game amongst the journalist media, right, I would come out with some pretty much single-digit percentage that those people represent of the game's media journalists, right, population. That's who we heard from in the reviews, right? When the other people that I listened to across the rest of the game's journalist media were not as high on games, right, on Elden Ring. In fact, specifically, right, what I remember is listening to Damon Hatfield on GameScoop and saying, him saying, I went into Elden Ring expecting something different, and it wasn't. In fact, his quote was, "It's the same old bullshit." right? So, and that's what I think a lot of people walked away from that game feeling, right? That there are certain things that it does different, right? And I'm not talking about how we feel about it as podcasters. I'm talking about how the consumer base, right, en masse feels about it, right? There's a lot of things that Elden Ring did that were different and iterations and made the game more approachable in comparison to Souls games, right? But there's still a lot of things that made the game grindy, repetitive in certain contexts. I'm not necessarily saying those things as bad things. I'm saying those things as factual things of numbers of iterations that you had to do a thing, right, over again. And so I just, at the end of the day, I think it's going to come down to, you know, who the games are for, and who the games, you know, which game is the most approachable by kind of the median of your consumer base. But that's the only thing. I mean, I think they're both great games.
No, I do. I think they're both great games. But where I might disagree with you here, Hamp, is that Sekiro, or is it Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, which is another, you know, From Software game, didn't win Game of the Year, and that game isn't nearly as accessible as I think Elden Ring is. Like that game is legit hard. Like I would argue that, and I've said this, Sekiro might be the hardest of the Souls games that I've played. Like it
doesn't have any cares.
Yeah, that game that game will I mean, it is very unforgiving. And that year that game went up against Sekiro went up against Control, which was Remedy's game, which was a really good game. Death Stranding, which we just talked about. Outer Worlds, Resident Evil 2, and let's talk about the most accessible game of that list, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
That is a very you're right about that.
And Sekiro won. So I just think, I get the accessibility piece, but there's some history here, I think, where we've seen games like with Sekiro, actually, more specifically Sekiro, which is a much harder game than Elden Ring, and I would even argue it's probably a little more niche than what Elden Ring is, and definitely never generated the kind of buzz that I saw with Elden Ring. I mean, it was just
the unfortunate thing is, and it's probably to God of War's benefit, we know what kind of, like, with Elden Ring, the conversation lasted for quite a while. It was more than just a month. It was literally teetering going into that game released in February. People were still talking about it in March, April. The fortunate thing for God of War is the Game Awards is literally right around the corner. So we won't get a chance to, we know people are still going to be talking about it, but is that noise going to be just as loud as what Elden Ring did in the middle of a season where there's nothing else going on? Like, we got to remember, the game released in February, people trying to recoup all their money from the holidays, not spend more of it. And God of War is going into the heart of what is the best time of the year to sell pretty much anything that you could sell as a consumer good. So the conversation is going to linger for a while, just because, you know, we got the Game Awards is going to be talking about it. If it's in the Game of the Year discussion, Elden Ring is going to get a bump from that because, you know, as always, anytime games go up for Game of the Year, people always want to go back and say, okay, what did I miss about this game? So it's going to benefit everything. But I think God of War, from just the recency of the game just releasing, you're not really going to get apple to apple comparisons on the lasting effect, how that game's going to be perceived by people. Because it is, I mean, like, I saw people that never even like Slow-Mo. Slow-Mo is, you know, he plays everything, but he is very particular about not wanting to play Souls types games. And for some reason, we were talking about this on DPS the other week, or last week. He couldn't put that game down. It literally was the only game he played for like a good 2 to 3 months, because it was that enticing to him.
He didn't even like Sekiro, I don't think.
Yeah, he didn't even like Sekiro. I mean,
and I'm like, I don't like Sekiro's great. Like, I think Sekiro's outside of Bloodborne, Sekiro's my favorite From Software game outside of Bloodborne.
It's by far the fastest Souls game in the community,
and I think it's the hardest too. And I'm telling you, man, like somebody in the live chat say like Sekiro, like that game, like I spent hours, like literally fighting one boss, like hours, and I ran through Elden Ring, like it was like I'm like, oh, this is easy. Like I got through the first boss, I'm like, oh, this is easy. Mm-hmm. You know, the final boss destroyed him. The only boss that gave me trouble in Elden Ring was what's her face? Melania.
Butterfly.
Melania?
No, Melania, yeah, I know.
Yeah, in Elden Ring. Yeah, because she was actually she was legit hard. I mean, she was the hardest, and she was an optional boss, but to me, she was like, okay, this is like a Sekiro boss. No, Lady Butterfly wasn't too she wasn't I didn't find her too hard as Sekiro, but I did find what is it, the Corrupted Monk? Not the ghost one, but the one on the bridge. Mm-hmm. That one gave me some trouble. The second playthrough, because the first playthrough I played it, you could kind of cheese it, and then they patched that. And so the second time gave me fits, and then let's like the last boss battle with Genichiro. I mean, holy moly, like that.
That boss fight is very
like when he pulls out a gun like a pistol, and I'm like, what is happening? But that fight, man, like, what does he have, like 4 phases?
5, I think.
So I'm glad Forte brought up the topic of recency bias, because when we talk about the year Shakiro, which I think is pronounced differently in the actual Japanese, I always get it wrong. There's a cast member on E2KG who speaks Japanese, so he always corrects me on that. But the year that game won Game of the Year, Super Smash Bros. Was actually a 2018 release. So it was a game that missed the cutoff the previous year, and still made it in. But we know that games, I mean, just like what's the Star Wars game whose name I always forget, that Respawn just did, they're doing the sequel for now.
Oh, Jedi. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, so same thing. That game missed the cutoff. It wasn't, it wasn't really a contender for Game of the Year the next year. I mean, it may have been dominated, but it wasn't really in the zeitgeist of the voting panel's memory. Resident Evil 2 remake, Death Stranding. I would argue poor marketing, but also just a game that had very limited appeal to a lot of people at the time. But was probably the strongest contender against Sekiro that year. The only thing I can say about Outer Worlds was that was like a Metacritic score was like a mid-80s game, and I just don't remember it really being strong in the discussion of Game of the Year. And so I would argue the really only competition that year for Sekiro was Control and Death Stranding. And Death Stranding, again, had the same problem where it was a game that was known to thought to be not appealing to a wide base of the consumer market. So, I mean, I think we're talking about a slightly different competition this year in terms of the dynamic and in terms of the comparison between Ragnarok and Elden Ring.
Well, let's real quick. Let me get these super chats. I do want to talk about the competition this year with the Game of the Year nominees. But Big Block CAC 1101 with the $5 super chat says, just want to remind that people gave Elden Ring a high score, even though a lot of them haven't beaten it. I think I'm aware of some people maybe not beating it. I don't know what a lot is, but I know there were some people that played it and reviewed it and necessarily beat it. Bobber Kotri with the $2 super chat says, Elden was super hyped 3 years, most anticipated 3 years. Thank you for that super chat. And then Bobber Kotri with the $2 super chat again says, reviews campaigned for years for Elden. So thank you for that. Thank you for the super chat, gentlemen. But let's go. I want to go to the Game of the Year nominees real quick. And by the way, like it's funny you bring up the Hamp. You mentioned Death Stranding, and I'll never forget that when that nomination came out, and people are doing it again. Look, Jeff Keighley doesn't have anything to do with picking the games. Like, I don't know why this is a conversation every year, but I saw somebody say, "Oh, Jeff is Jeff shows his Sony bias. He's a Sony fanboy." Okay, Jeff does not pick the nominees. Like, you go to the website, he clearly explains this. People, go to the website and read up on how and who and when the media votes for these things. There's a governing body, which some of you who are waving the green flag, who are out there calling out Jeff Keighley, Phil Spencer sits on the board of governors for this for the game show. And
they all frauds for putting Stray up there.
AMD, Stray's a good game.
I know it's a great game. It didn't deserve to be up there over other games like Code of the Lamb, but I digress.
Well, I was surprised that Stray made it. Honestly, I thought
that was the
Lamb
first
been there.
game when I saw that list. I double taked on that. I was like, what?
No. Let me go to the nominees here because I think there's a good mix here. So we have a Plague's Tale Requiem, which I've only played maybe 3 or 4 hours, but I've enjoyed the 3 or 4 hours of the game that I play. Like it's a good game. Elden Ring, which you talked about, God of War Ragnarok. Now here's one that Horizon Forbidden West. So Sony's got 2 Game of the Year nominees here. Horizon Forbidden West. Do you guys could we see like a surprise here where maybe Horizon wins? I don't think they will, but and then there's Stray, which is as Slow-Mo says the token indie game that gets put in every year, and then Xenoblade Chronicles 3 from Monolith Soft, which is on the which I still need to play.
I don't know how Kirby didn't make it over that, but once again,
so those are the nominees for Game of the Year. So what do you think, Forte? I'll go to you first of the nominees here, man.
I mean, I'm fine with all of them with the exception of Stray because I feel like there's other games that should have been in there. I mean, I'm not trying to down Stray or anything. I mean, I just think it wasn't a game that most people when they first played it or even heard of it was like, oh, this has Game of the Year potential and stuff. So, I mean, it doesn't mean that the developers don't deserve their flowers and stuff when it comes to that. But I was just kind of taken back by that one being on there because I felt like there's other ones that should have been there. I'm fine with Xenoblade Chronicles being there because it is a really good game. I think games like Kirby should have been in there because I think of all the Kirby games over the last decade or so, this is by far the best version of Kirby they've ever had, and it's probably one of the strongest ones. It actually is the one that sold the most copies of any Kirby game ever as of right now. So I just think people kind of just missed the boat on that one. But me and Summer went back and forth on the whole Horizon being inside of it, and I always felt like once you saw Starfield get delayed out of this year, that's when that kind of opened up the door for a game like that to come in there. Or maybe it was the way that Plague's Tale got in there. I mean, if you want to say that, just on the strength of the name alone, that Horizon got in on its merits like that, maybe Plague's Tale was the one that kind of benefited by Starfield being pushed out of this year. But when I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, place I could see that, wouldn't have been a choice that I had to go in there. But, most of the games that really excited people kind of got moved out of this year outside of God of War and stuff and Horizon. So I'm good with the list. Just Stray just threw me for a loop when I saw it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Hamp, on the nominees?
I'm fine with the list. I don't have any major heartache with it. Yeah, I mean it's as I've said very frequently, in the past. It's an award show. I don't hold the TGAs up as the Oscar awards of the gaming industry. As I always point to, there are other award shows where the actual industry creators vote, and I hold those in much higher regard. The TGAs is, it's like I said before, it's the Golden Globes, right, where I get a sense of what the media feels about a thing, and it's a big marketing vehicle, right, for people to fuel people spending the last of their holiday dollars before
That's all it is.
Christmas, right? So I mean, it's an indicator and a pulse point. I don't, of the things in there, I don't have any major heartache. I mean, Horizon Zero Dawn is Zero Dawn. Forbidden West, by all accounts, because I haven't played the game myself, which is sad because I actually have a Horizon Zero Dawn PS5 edition that came bundled with the game, and I still haven't downloaded it for my code to play it. But by all accounts, it's a great game that had a lot of great reception. Again, recency bias came out earlier in the year. Definitely merits inclusion in that group. Whether or not it's competitive with, the top two games in it, I think is a different discussion. But like I said, I don't have any major heartburn. I'm, as you and I were talking earlier in the week, of all gaming studios, and I spend a lot of time going back looking at studio history and kind of where they came from and what they did. Like what Guerrilla Games has done and where they came from and what they were doing, and the fact that now they're one of the marquee studios that runs alongside Naughty Dog and Sucker Punch and Insomniac. It is an incredible factor, right, in just looking at kind of studio history and culture. For the studio that was kind of saddled, for the studio that was doing Killzone and was kind of saddled with the responsibility of trying to make the Halo killer, which they were never really successfully able to do, for them to pivot into not only pivot into the game in the franchise for Horizon, but to actually then also build out the technology of the Decima engine that now, Kojima Studios leans on. Like that's just a super impressive feat of talent and direction and leadership, I think.
Yeah, that Decima engine is a beast. I mean,
I think that's the best thing that they ever made.
Yeah,
honestly.
that's
even above all the games they made. I think the Decima engine was their best creation.
Yeah, that's impressive. I mean, but I would agree with you, Hamp. Like I don't have any issues with the list. I'm not out here screaming bias and stuff like that. I think I've played some of these games. I played all the games here except for Xenoblade Chronicles 3 as an indie game. And I haven't beat Stray, but I put a couple hours into it. And Annapurna does have they do have a good reputation in the industry with some of the games they've developed, but or put out. But I enjoyed Stray. I thought it was a very charming game, and it was a nice game to kind of just pick up and just kick up your feet and just relax and enjoy. It wasn't too much thought behind it. It wasn't puzzle solving. Well, there was some puzzle solving in the game, but it wasn't like it wasn't a very stressful experience for me, which was nice. Like I like those, like pick up the controller, easy to play, and just enjoy it at your leisure. And look, I as much as I thought playing as a cat was weird when I first saw this game, I enjoyed it. I found it to be very charming. And then Elden Ring and Plague's Tale and God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West. I've played those games. Those are some of my favorite games this year. For the indies, I've spent time with Neon White, Stray, and Tunic. Mm-hmm.
Neon White is an interesting take on design, but is a little kind of limited in its design approach and the way it kind of tries to combine like a speed run or with a first-person shooter. And Stray is definitely had a story and a narrative that was kind of deliberately designed to kind of tug at the heartstrings more than Neon White. And that look, certain movies are built certain ways so that they are Oscar contenders, right? And if you're gonna build a story and a gaming narrative that is designed to kind of deliberately play on the heartstrings, and that's gonna get you points and nods in a direction when it comes to end of the year awards. Forte, I guess you spent time with Cult of the Lamb. I mean, was Cult of the Lamb a little niche, or do you think it had wide and broad enough appeal that it should have upset Stray as kind of the indie representative into the
I just think the systems that it's very simplistic in the game design that they did. I just think the simplicity of it is they just made a really good, compelling game where you can not only enjoy the game in the way that it was designed, but you can also enjoy it with your friends as a case study on hey, I can name all these players. No games have done this before where you can take people and name characters in the game, whatever you want to do it. But I think the whole follower mechanic and being able to kind of grief your friends and family without them even being there, I just think that was a really good implementation of a game that I haven't seen before in that type of game. And on top of it, it was a really good entry point into more of that genre of I forget the name of that genre. What's the name of that genre?
You know, a roguelike.
Yeah, roguelike genre that they done, because we've seen many different ways of roguelikes being done. I just think this was a more approachable way of them to do it, and I think it made it have a little bit more appeal than most games in that genre would ever have.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I almost called you Slow Mo Forte.
That's okay. I am Slow Mo, kind of.
You are Slow Mo. Yeah. So those are the games for game of the year, and then there's best game direction, which also is you'll find Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Immortality, which I have not played. Has anyone played that?
I don't even know what that is. What is that? Tell me, boy.
Yeah, boy. What is
woman, watch the house.
Oh my God, what is going on here? Come on, Game Awards. Hold on.
House is on fire.
Yeah, let me look at Immortality. It's a PC game on Steam. It's an interactive film video game developed by Sam Barlow, published by Half Mermaid Production. It was released for Windows, Xbox Series X and S in August of 2022. Oh. Yeah, so OpenCritic's at 88%, and Steam it's at it's 9 out of 10. So
interesting.
Yeah, I haven't played it.
Interesting.
It's also free to Netflix subscribers as well now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there you go.
So it's a Netflix Studios game then?
Yeah, no, it just came to Netflix like this last week.
Right, but is it by? I mean, I guess I would assume that it's then by one of the studios that they've purchased.
I don't know. Maybe. Yeah.
I'll look it up.
Yeah. Hold on a sec here. I'm looking at. I'm trying to go back to the Game Awards site here. All right, so best game direction, and then Stray's there too. All right, let's go to best narrative. Plague's Tale, Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Forbidden West, Immortality. I need to check out Immortality. This game, I'm seeing this come up quite a bit. I need to check this game out. Best art direction, again, Elden Ring, God of War, Horizon Forbidden West. Scorn is there.
Oh,
Scorn.
Lord.
The alien people.
Scorn.
That made it, and then Stray's there.
That game should win best art direction.
What, Scorn?
Yep.
I haven't played it. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's interesting.
It's nothing to really play.
All right. Best score in music: Plague's Tale, Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Metal Hellsinger, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Xenoblade got really good music, but God of War is probably going to win that.
Boy,
you said Elden Ring's in that?
Elden Ring's there too, yeah.
Oh, Elden Ring, right? Elden Ring. It's going to be real interesting. We're going to really put Slow-Mo's theory to the test if one runs away with all the other awards, but the other one wins Game of the Year. Because they're not gonna allow this. They're not gonna allow either one of those.
Didn't that happen with Red Dead Redemption 2?
That happened with 2018 God of War, where Red Dead won every single category.
And then God of War, yeah.
And then God of War won Game of the Year. And I was like, how is that even possible? How can a game win every category that it's in? And then you say, well, this game can be great and all these other things, but it's still not the best game of the year. I'm like, makes no sense, but okay.
It's the same way that Denzel can win an Oscar for Training Day, which was by far not his best performance.
But it was the most loved performp
Sympathy Oscar.
No. You are not about to get away with calling that a sympathy Oscar. Training Day, listen, man, Training Day was an amazing movie. I'm not saying it was his best performance ever, but I feel like it was the best portrayal of what that character Lonzo was in that game, in that movie. I think he did a great job of portraying that character. Good. That was a great freaking movie, and he deserves that freaking Oscar because he embodied that character, and I think he just did a great job with the character in general. Not saying that he doesn't do a great job with other ones. I just think that character kind of spoke to him in that movie, and that's why he kind of just nailed just the character. If you didn't like the character, then you wouldn't have, you could care less, honestly.
All right, let's go to best audio design. That's Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Gran Turismo 7, Polyphony.
That's easy.
Horizon Forbidden West. All right, and then we got best performance. Now these are this is an award for individuals for voiceover acting, motion, and/or performance capture. We have Ashley Birch, Horizon Forbidden West, Charlotte McBurney, A Plague Tale Requiem, Christopher Judge, as we know he voices Kratos in God of War, Manon Gage in Immortality, and Sonny Suljic in God of War Ragnarok. So I think Sonny's the one who does a voice for what's his face? God, what's his name now? Atreus. Atreus.
Boy, don't talk to me that way.
I love when Atreus like imitates him. That's hilarious.
Oh yeah, he says, "Woman, guard the house."
Yeah, guard the house. Yeah.
Woman, guard the house. I'm go fishing at the lake.
He's like, what did you? He goes, what did you say to mom? Like, woman, guard the house. I'm going fishing. And he's like, no, actually, your mother was a better at fishing than I was.
Than I was.
Yeah.
I was like, he made me die when he was in the boat and said that, man. It was so good.
Oh, I was laughing, yeah. Games for Impact. This is for thought-provoking game with a pro-social meaning or message. A Memoir Blue, which I've never played. As Dusk Falls, which I need to play. Citizen Sleeper. Ending Extinction is Forever. Hindsight, I was a teenage exocolonist. So those are the nominees for that category. And best ongoing. So these are like ongoing live service games.
Final Fantasy 14.
I think that's probably going to win it. But here we go. Apex Legends.
This time.
Your favorite, Destiny 2, Final Fantasy 14, Fortnite, Genshin Impact. Wasn't Genshin Impact nominated last year? I feel like these games are nominated before.
They're nominated every year.
So why even have that? I mean, like, I don't know. I just feel like,
why not? Hey man, you gotta. It's only a few peaks at the top of that mountain.
Yeah, right. I hope Destiny 2 wins it for you, Forte.
And that would kind of validate the decisions that Bungie's made, and I don't think their decisions need to be validated.
All right,
they need to do better right now than what they're doing.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Final Fantasy win that. I feel like that game's had a.
It could be Fortnite this time. Fortnite could win it this year.
Yeah, they got me hooked, and I was not a Fortnite player, and I am really enjoying Fortnite a lot. They seem to be able to kind of reinvent themselves and just keep me coming back, with little tweaks to, some of the gameplay and, level design, mechanics, things like that. There's subtle tweaks, but there's still, anyhow. Best indie. Here we go. Cult of the Lamb, which is a game you were talking about, Forte. And Neon White, which is a game that Hamp brought up. And Sifu, which I haven't played.
Sifu.
Stray and Tunic, which Hamp mentioned as well.
Tunic should have been in there too.
Now, Hamp, you played Tunic, Neon White. Which is your favorite of the two, man?
Of those two, Neon White.
Neon White, okay. All right. Best mobile game: Apex Legends Mobile, Diablo Immortal, Genshin Impact, Marvel Snap, Tower of Fantasy. All right. I'm going to go through all these categories. Best community support. Oh, you're going to love this, Forte. Mm-hmm. Apex Legends, Destiny 2.
No.
He said no. Final Fantasy 14, Fortnite, No Man's Sky. Look at No Man's Sky. Remember that game launched?
That game that game could win a lot of categories based on the community support that it's getting.
Yeah, that game is just, what a rebound story. What a great story, by the way. Hello Games just put their heads down
in the sand.
And actually really improve that game quite a bit.
They're like seagulls looking for fish for a long time.
Oh my god. All right, let's go to innovation and accessibility. Recognize software and or hardware that is pushing the medium forward by adding features, technology, and content to help games being played and enjoyed by an even wider audience. Actually, God of War Ragnarok has been praised a lot for that. But we have the nominees are As Dusk Falls, God of War Ragnarok, Return to Monkey Island. God, Monkey Island protects so many memories as a kid playing on PC. The Last of Us Part 1 and The Quarry, the Supermassive Games Quarry, which I think Slow-Mo streamed that, I think.
Yeah.
Forte, did you ever play Monkey Island? As a youngster?
A long time ago.
Yeah. What about you, Hamp?
It's been a minute. No.
Hamp's like, no. All right, best VR AR. After the Fall. Among Us VR.
That might win, and it just came out.
Bone Lab. Moss. Book 2. I need to play Moss. Moss
is a really good game. My daughter I watched her play it. It's actually pretty cool.
Everyone talks about how great Moss is. Actually, those are former Bungie devs that made that game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then Red Matter 2. Best action game. And this game just came out too. Bayonetta 3. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Neon White. Sifu. And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. That's really cool to see that game. Not his best action game. It's a classic.
Classic, baby.
It's a classic. Best action adventure game. A Plague's Tale. God of War. Ragnarok. Horizon Forbidden West. Stray and Tunic.
Man, the fact that Stray is considered an action adventure. Okay. Do you jump on people with your paws?
No, I don't think you're not beating up anyone with your paws, but you're
not beating up nobody.
No, but you are.
You're not even opening your own doors in that game.
No, but you are. I mean, but there's action and it's a sense of adventure. Yeah, so I don't have an issue with that.
Okay, sure.
I don't think you need to have guns and all right, best role playing game. Elden Ring, Live a Live, Pokemon Legends Arceus, Triangle Strategy, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Triangle Strategy is the worst named video game ever. They literally kept the code name for the game because they couldn't come up with a compelling name to actually make that game.
All right, next category.
Best fighting. Sir Nick says, did Forte start hating Destiny because Sony owns them? No, I just am super tired of them right now because the content loop in that game is freaking horrendous right now because we're doing the same thing over and over again. And we usually go through this phase when we're in the third season because we can see over the horizon the brand new stuff, Lightfall, coming out in February of next year. But it seems like we still got half a year to get there, even though it's 5 months. And we just want new and better things in the game. So this is nothing new for the community. I'm just voicing my opinion on it a little bit more because it finally affects me because I just don't see myself playing the game as much right now due to that. So that's why I'm a little negative on it.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with ownership. I think it's a well-known factor that nobody hates Destiny 2 more so than people who play tons and tons of Destiny 2.
Exactly. That's exactly how it is.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. All right, best fighting game, DNF Duel, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, All-Star Battler R, The King of Fighters 15, Multiverse, and Sifu. Best family. Here you go. Best family, Forte.
It's all Nintendo.
Kirby and the Forgotten Land.
Should have been in Game of the Year.
Actually,
but go
pretty
ahead.
much is all Nintendo for the most part.
It's literally the family category. Is they just should rename it Nintendo category.
Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga.
That's the only third-party game on that whole list.
Mario Rabbids, and then there's Nintendo Switch Sports, and then Splatoon 3. I need to play
Right.
Splatoon 3.
Splatoon 3 might actually win. Well,
Splatoon's actually a pretty good game.
Oh yeah, but I bought it for my daughter today because she was like, "Dad, Splatoon 3."
Those are good games. Yeah. I remember I was kind of pooping because I'm like, oh, it's like paint and stuff, but no, it's I got my ass handed to me when I first started playing online. I was like, whoa, wait a minute.
There's more to this.
Yeah, no, there is. This game is actually pretty good. The mechanics are really solid. Let's see here. Best sim strategy: Dune, Spice Wars, Mario Rabbids, Total Warhammer 3, 2 Point Campus.
Sorry, Shannon Loftus.
And Victoria 3. Those are the best sim strategy games. Best sports racing. Here we go. F1 2022, FIFA 23, NBA 2K23, Gran Turismo 7, and Ali Ali World. I've heard a lot of great stuff about Ali Ali World. Have you, anyone on the panel played it?
I played a little bit of it. It is actually really cool. I just don't think the staying power was there for it long term when it comes to and that's what you kind of look for when you're looking at games like this. Those are the type of games that people play all the time.
Yeah. Hey, Hamp, as somebody who plays Gran Turismo, do you think they'll get the nod here?
I don't. In comparison to last year when Horizon 5 ousted, F121, because again, that Forza Horizon 5 was super approachable by a very large basis of the gaming consumer base. I don't think Gran Turismo will get the upset to F122. I have some probably very specific peculiarities around racing games because of the amount of them that I play. Gran Turismo 7 is great on the track. It's a slog for me off the track. It does a lot of things that it forces you through. It carries a lot of baggage of things in ways that I don't like. Whereas the F122 off-track implementation for me is really enjoyable. You can build your own F1 team. You have a progression path. You have upgrades in 4 different categories. You can build out your team. You can compete on the grid in the same way that you do in real world F1, where there are teams who are really technically excellent. There are teams who are really high in reliability. There are teams that have really great driver talent. And so there is a good kind of RPG element kind of to building an F122 team. And I think at the end of the day, it nails the simulation part better than Gran Turismo does. GT7 is still a great game. I just don't think it has the wide basis of appeal that Forza Horizon 5 did, and I therefore don't think that when it goes up against F122 this year, that don't necessarily win out. But then you have FIFA 23 this year as well, which I've heard good things about. I haven't played this year's FIFA, so it'll be interesting. I have actually played a lot of Ali Ali World on several different platforms. I actually do find that it very much has kind of the same appeal that like a Trials or would have, or maybe that they would have hoped that Riders Republic or something would have had.
I was hooked on Trials for a little bit. I was playing with my kids too. Yeah,
and it does a weird mix of you talked about Stray and how it's kind of a cozy game and didn't super stress you out. There's parts of that in Ali Ali World, but then there are parts where they ramp up the difficulty where you're just going to be getting your thumbs numb, right, doing multiple runs on a particular board. Trying to get past it. But the entire time, to me, it's enjoyable. I think I mentioned earlier this year, when I lay Elden Ring down next to something like Ali Ali World, because they came out kind of in the same window. One of the differences was when I had to repetitively do something in Elden Ring, I was aggravated. But when I had to repetitively do something in Ali Ali World, I just kind of sat there calmly and kind of worked my way through it. Again, 2 different games, but a commentary on kind of how the difference in dynamic. And it's in the relationship that you build with those games as a gamer varies based on the design approach and kind of based on how they put challenges in front of you. I actually think Ali Ali World has a good chance to do well, being in this category, but being an indie and having kind of a unique artistic appeal amongst a field of games that are just representative of sequelitis, right, across the industry. All of these games are just the next iterative, what should arguably be a point release, not a full blown, whole version number update to an ongoing franchise. So we'll see how it comes out.
Let's see here. Where was I? Yeah, I appreciate that insight, Hamp, on the racing games.
Sports.
Best multiplayer. The Titans of multiplayers are in this, and that's Overwatch 2, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Multiverse is here, Splatoon 3, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Shredder's Revenge is nominated as well.
I think Multiverse can actually make some noise in that one.
I seem to be pretty popular when it came out. Well,
yeah,
I heard a lot of buzz about it, but all right, this particular category gave some people up in arms, which is funny. Content Creator of the Year for a streamer or content creator who has made an important and positive impact on the community in 2022. Carl Jacobs, Ludwig, and Nebellion.
Good old Ludwig.
Yeah, Nebellion is what got some people had some people really kind of looking at this category sideways. I don't have an issue with Nebellion being nominated. Some others do. Nobru and QT Cinderella is the other nominee. So, what do you guys think about the Nebellion thing? Because that was something that seemed to be quite that was talked about quite a bit on social media. No thoughts?
I mean, for my own take, I don't know. I find this. I get it. There's I suspect the difference is generational. There are people who regard this category with relevance. I don't. I can kind of care less. I don't. This is uniquely my perspective. Being said, as a person who does not consider myself in the gaming community, I find all of these accounts equally useless. So I don't know, what the point is of including the category in there, nor why people are up in arms about it. And I appreciate what Nebellion was, did on Twitter just in terms of getting information out. But I myself had that account muted because they reported everything, including the stuff that I normally try and filter out because I need things to be corroborated and to come from legitimate journalistic sources. And what came across the wire from that account was just like everything. Granted, not in a tabloid kind of way that a lot of other YouTubers and Twitterers do, but it was just too much. I was just getting a lot of chaff in there in amongst the few parcels of useful information. So I don't know. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, I'm not really big into following content creators. I just don't have the time for it, nor do they really interest me, to be honest with you. Like I just don't like yeah. The Nebellion thing, like people are like, oh, well, he was just tweeting on Twitter. That's not really content creation, but I tweeted this out. But content creation exists on a spectrum. It's not specifically siloed to people who stream or do YouTube. There's different forms of content creation, and simple Google search was content marketing, and that's kind of what he was doing, where he was leveraging social media to market specific products to a specific demographic. That product in this case was video games, and look, in reading the description here, it says streamer or content creator has made an important and positive impact on the community in 2022. To me, the community isn't just people on YouTube or Twitch. That's just the general community and where you find those individuals in that community. And those individuals can be anywhere on different social media platforms. So that's how I kind of look at it. I wasn't, yeah. So.
As far as people throwing that shade, I mean, I would also say the other people in this category may or may not, qualify as what in my mind is a content creator. One of the reasons it doesn't pass, the whole thing doesn't cross the threshold for me is because, I've had this discussion with a lot of people who have I've spent time live streaming. I'm kind of rolling off that bandwagon now. when people would say, well, when I'm live streaming, I am creating content, and I'm like, look, we've all probably done some level of creative activity. I've architected software, I've written short stories, I've written a script for a short film, right, and shot and directed a short film. And I blog and write very frequently. I know damn well that when I'm engaged in other creative activities, I know and I can tell I am not exercising the same muscles to the same extent that I do when I'm live streaming, right? When I'm just playing a game and commenting on the game and the experiences that I'm having. In my mind, that does not equate to the, extent of cognitive energy that you're expending when you are painting, right, or doing something that's really creative. And so I don't concur that live streamers, just by sake of playing a game and commenting on it on a camera, are the equivalent of those other activities. People who have a shtick or an act. Not that I like that kind of a concept, but I'll concur that those people are doing a thing, right? They're offline planning. They're coming up with their thing, and so I get that. But quite frankly, I've always felt that a lot of the people who profess a lot of the traits of the live streaming community have kind of lofty ideals of what they actually do. So I don't think it puts them in a place to throw shade at Nebelian.
No. All right. Next category: best debut indie, Neon White, Norco, and Stray, Tunic, and Vampire Survivors.
Nice.
I see people. Yeah, go ahead.
This is kind of, and this is my commentary, because you're on category 24 out of 31. My commentary about, like, look at the awards that you've read out and the categories that you've read out, and look at how there are the repeat contenders across multiple categories.
Yeah.
Even to the extent now this year where that extends to the 2 indie categories.
Yep.
Right. And so to me, there's a couple things that may say something about the proliferation of games this year. There have been people who have tried to go out and say that this is a soft year. They have based that argument around not a lot of AAA games. And I think if you look at the numbers and actually look at it from a data perspective, that is true. That doesn't mean that there hasn't been things to play. There's been plenty to play, but it just hasn't been right at the same numbers that it has been previous years. But now we're in the indie category, and we're seeing like 3 of the games repeat, right, from the indie category itself. Quite honestly,
Stray, Tunic,
to an extent where I don't know that this year that it made a lot of sense for there to be both an indie category and a debut indie category. So I think maybe it says something about the productivity of the industry, but also, again, as I've talked about, I think it also may say something about kind of the limited kind of palette that I feel like the voting panel has, right, in the games that they turn the spotlight on. And I think that's worth a discussion amongst the gaming community to sort out if we feel like the net should be cast a bit wider, right, on some of these categories.
Yeah.
Sure.
Next category is best adaptation. That is recognized outstanding creative work that faithfully and authentically adapts a video game to another entertainment medium. So Arcane, League of Legends, Cyberpunk Edgerunners, which is, wow. I really enjoyed that show. Really enjoyed it on Netflix. I thought it was great. Cuphead show, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the movie, and Uncharted the movie. Uncharted actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I was a little concerned with but
I
actually wasn't
liked
bad.
it.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
It was on Netflix, so we're good.
Yeah. Most anticipated game. Here you go, Forte.
Oh.
Final Fantasy 16. Hogwarts Legacy. Resident Evil 4. Starfield.
Oh, what is that game?
Come on, man.
What is that game?
I'm excited for Starfield.
I think you can't be excited for something you don't know about.
The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom.
Yes. It already won Game of the Year for 2023.
Oh my goodness, man! It
already won.
It already won.
It already won, bro. It already won. Yeah, no, unless they drop the ball so horrifically, they already won.
Yeah, I would say, out of I'm interested in all the games except for Hogwarts Legacy. That just hasn't.
I don't know
anything.
what it is about did the last reveal, like the gameplay trailer they showed?
I don't know, man.
Did that kind of turn you off from it a little bit?
I don't know, man. It just really hasn't clicked. I don't know what it is. I think I don't know, man. I don't know.
Maybe is it maybe that people finally woke up and realized that this was a studio that does not have a track record for putting out a ton of great games, and
that's true. I mean,
whose track record. I try to pull back a lot from throwing a wet blanket on other people's fun, but since this thing has launched and people went gaga for it, I'm like, why? I'm like, I looked at the studio track record and I'm like, I don't see a lot of past evidence that leads me to believe that this is going to be a banger, and I'm not going to go down the path of rah-rahing it based on the license. I mean, they could take a license and make a bad game, which is the most likely output, right? Given their past history, but I wanted people to be happy and to be happy for a Harry Potter game. So
yeah,
it's interesting that now that's cooling off.
I think part of it too is I'm just not interested outside of their the studio's history. I'm just not. I think I'm just not excited for a Harry Potter game. Like it doesn't do anything for me. Starfield though, again, this is Todd Howard's first new IP in over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we know Bethesda's pedigree, Bethesda Game Studios in particular. And I know somebody's going to bring up, what about Fallout 76? One game.
What about it?
One game. And Starfield is, yeah, and it's a space. It's in space. So
here's my thing on Tears of the Kingdom.
Go ahead, speak. You gotta hear this.
Ham's hype.
I am questioning.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Whether or not more Breath of the Wild on the same Switch hardware.
I'm with you on that.
Is gonna hit. Look. There are some dyed in the wool Zelda fans who are not going to come off that ratchet no matter what. They could put out a game. They could put out a game on a Game Boy Retro, right? And those people will be talking about that being Game of the Year. But you
speaking right now.
I try to be tolerant and I try to be accepting, but I just question. Nintendo does some amazing things with the hardware set that they have. Mm-hmm. I have to question at this point, going into 6 years into the life cycle of that hardware set, how much more they're going to be able to do with Tears of the Kingdom that is going to be a stretch far enough beyond Breath of the Wild for that game to really power through against the competitive field of other games that are going to come out for the 8 months after it releases. Is it a March release?
Yeah, it's a March release.
I thought it was April.
Yeah, so
is it April? Oh yeah,
April, May. I think I gotta go back and look.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay,
so there's going to be another half year of games that are going to come out after it, right? That is my point.
Yeah. So I agree with you. But I agree with you based on the same thing that I felt about God of War. I don't know how they're going to make. There was clear things. Okay, so I didn't know how they was going to make God of War better because I felt like 2018 was really good, like outside of technical limitations and stuff that they had in the game that I knew would be able to be fixed by the next generation. I know what they need to fix in Breath of the Wild. They need to fill that empty desert of a world that they had. Because as much as I loved the fact that it was open world, there was long stretches of that open world that there was just really nothing going on. It was just basically climb this rock, climb this tower, parachute from this point to the other point. Go to this town, go to that town. But there was really nothing in between. So I think the love affair of just the open world of a Zelda game has kind of worn off. They need to fill that world now. The next thing they need to do is they need to bring traditional dungeons back to the game. Like, it was cool doing the shrines. The shrines are really good.
The shrines are cool. But I agree
Shrines
with
are
you.
Really cool.
Dungeons,
They
yes.
need,
I would agree with
legitimate dungeons in this game where you go into an instance and you don't come out of it for 3 to 4 hours. That's what they need to do in this game. And the last thing, classic Zelda, and the last thing they need to do is spruce up. I mean, the shrines are great. I need them to do a little bit more than paint by numbers and give you 7 or 8 different types of shrines and then allow you to kind of, make them challenging to the point. Like you shouldn't have, it should take a skill to complete all 135 different shrines they had. It should have been a skill to like go in and complete all of those. Like some should have been to the point like, yo, this is hard. I got to come back and do this when I get a little bit more gear. That's what I feel like they kind of need to do. And then they just need to flesh out the story a little bit more. But the biggest things, it needs to have a dungeon. We need more than one in there that actually makes it feel like a true Zelda game. And then they just need to spruce up the open world and give us more things inside of it than what they gave us in the first one. And if they can do that, they're playing with house money, honestly, at that point. At least in my opinion. Playing with house money. Because let's be for real. Starfield is an unknown game. I mean, and it's going to get a boost just because people are going to be excited to play something new. But I think the only thing that's going against Zelda is the fact that everybody knows that it's good. And Nintendo is also known to be the company that can drop the ball on something like this and disappoint people. Now, are they going to disappoint you to the point where it's bad? No. But are they going to fix the issues in the game that are going to make people want to like say, yo, this game in February or March or April is already game of the year all over again? And are we going to see those 10s like we saw last time? That's going to be the deciding factor for that game, for me at least.
Yeah, you're not going to get away. You're not going to get away with just nailing vertical traversal this time.
Right, exactly.
Last time out of the gate, that was an innovation. Lots of games are doing that now. And then you have to look at just how games have progressed in terms of how they're handling traversal in general when you look at something like Spider-Man and Miles Morales. And just how the design ball has moved right downfield. So for me personally, as a gamer, the problem is that I'm not a dyed-in-the-wool Zelda fan. Breath of the Wild was the only Zelda game that I've actually liked, and that was as a result of them leaning a little bit more towards Western RPG design, and I appreciated that. Again, I think, just as I mentioned about Guerrilla, that was a creative team level, set of decision making that was significant and impressive, right? In terms of the way they kind of pivoted away from previous designs of the past and intermingled, what to me arguably was the best of both Eastern and Western RPG design, and came out with a pretty unique mixture on the market. The problem for me is, I believe Starfield is going to be something more than a lot of the naysayers have said about it. My thing is, even if Starfield is nothing but Fallout and Skyrim in space, I think that's enough.
That's a win. It is a win. You're right.
And I shouldn't say that's enough. I'm just going to say, I didn't play Skyrim. I didn't play Fallout 4 right when they first came out. They were games that I came back to. Both times with those games, I fell in immediate love with like all the doubts that I'd had about. I don't think first person like melee combat in an RPG setting, fantasy setting, really works for me from a general thing of like what I kind of like and I like immediately fell in love right with both sets of those games. So even if they're just that in space, like you said, that's a win. And I think it's going to be more than that. So I think the potential there is huge. And it's being implemented on a next generation console, and it's coming to PC. So, I've been very happy with my Nintendo Switch. I've doubled down by buying a Nintendo Switch OLED, right? I have all the stuff. I've got the Joy-Con grip, yada, 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 right? I just, just in terms of kind of what I think about in terms of technological capability and lifecycle management, it just causes me some doubts.
Right. I don't disagree with you on that. I think a lot of our predictions on the reason they kept moving Breath of the Wild back or Tears of the Kingdom back is because they were trying to time the launch of that with a brand new system. Because I think it kind of needs to be, not saying a brand new system in general, like next generation, but that rumored Switch Pro, we definitely need that along a game like this because I don't think the Switch as it's currently represented can really push the narrative forward on that game or just push the overall issues that we had with that game forward because you're still going to if you're talking about a bigger version of the game that we already had. So if you were already struggling with frame rate, game pacing and stuff like that, what's going to happen when you double or make it 50% bigger? So I mean, I do want to give them a little credit because it was 2017 when this game did come out, and they have probably learned a lot of lessons when it comes to developing for the Switch over the course of the last 5 years, 6 years. So by the time this game comes out, they probably did find a way to code directly to the metal a little bit better. But I am a little worried about that, just like you are. But if you're a Zelda fan, this is the game you've been waiting for the last 4 years.
That's the thing for it too. Like I don't disagree with you gentlemen, like, about the limitations of the Switch and I guess the impact of that to the design of Zelda, of this next Zelda. But it's Zelda and Nintendo Zelda knows this and it's going to sell gangbusters and there's no motivation for them to do anything other than putting this game on a platform that's very successful for them right now. This is going to be a game that just is going to sell. I mean, I can't wait till we get there, Forte, to hear your stories of people coming to your store, and they're going to drop that Switch Zelda bundle, and that thing's going to sell like gangbusters. So,
that's why I didn't update my OLED yet because I was about to get the new Pokemon one because I really really like the color Joy-Cons in the orange and purple. But I was like, no, I'm going to wait because I know I'm going to want to get that Zelda one when they come out with it next year because they're definitely going to do that. But I also think, let's be for real, I think Nintendo of all companies, they're very calculating when it comes to certain things. I think they see where the Switch is in sales right now, and I don't think they want to stop that forward momentum because I think they truly want to be the number one console sold ever. And they got an opportunity to do that. Like, I think they crossed 120 something, like 22 million earlier this year. I think they're really, really going for it. And I think that's kind of, I'm not going to say it's stopping what they want to do with the next generation system, unless they're basically saying the next Switch or whatever the next version of the handheld they come out with is a new generation. I don't know if they want to end it just now because they're selling this hardware like it's brand new in 2017 still. They're just doing little small increment upgrades, like giving it more space, giving it more battery life, giving you an OLED screen that's giving you a better viewing and playing experience when you're on the go. But they're not doing anything when it comes to the ability for you to play it on your TV. That's where it's really lacking at. But I also think they don't care. Because their fans don't care and they just want to sell as many of those things as possible. And I think they want to look at it and say, like 25 years ago, Sony backed out of a partnership with us to make their very first, console, the PlayStation 1. And then they had the highest selling console in the PlayStation 2. Wouldn't it be nice to say that Nintendo owns that crown? And this is the best opportunity they have it with the hardware that they have right now. And I don't see them moving off of it until they actually get to that goal.
Yeah, no, I that's a great point, Forte. I do want to get to the last. There's a couple more categories here, but this is gonna be the last one I mentioned because the other ones are like esports teams and stuff.
Yeah, skip those.
Coach, yeah. But best esports games: Counter-Strike Global Offensive, Dota 2, League of Legends, Rocket League, and Valorant. So,
wasn't it ever won? See, I mean, I know Go has won before, but has it won ever? Has it won recently?
I don't know, man.
Because it seems like it's like one of those games, like you say, it seems like the same games are always in that that games as a service, like ongoing games, is always the same games. It always seems like for esports, CSGO is always there, but I never see CSGO win because it always is something else that wins.
Yeah, I don't think they've won. Yeah, so. But no, gentlemen, that was a great conversation with as it relates to the Game Award nominees. But I do want to just touch on a quick topic real quick, because Phil Spencer had an interview with The Verge, where he again doubles down on what Microsoft wants to do, their intent with Call of Duty, in which Phil Spencer says he says. Native Call of Duty on PlayStation, not linked to them having to carry Game Pass, not streaming. If they want a streaming version of Call of Duty, we could just do that as well, just like we do on our own consoles. There's nothing behind my back. It is the Call of Duty of Modern Warfare. It is the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Hold on, it is the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 doing great on PlayStation, doing great on Xbox. The next game, the next game. Native on the platform, not having to subscribe to Game Pass. Sony does not have to take Game Pass on their platform to make that happen. There's nothing hiding. We want to continue to ship Call of Duty on PlayStation without any kind of weird, I figured out the gotcha. That's our intent. I understand some people's concerns with this. I'm just trying to be as clear as I can be.
Man, the power of this deal. The power that Microsoft really wants this to go through, man, that they are saying whatever they need to say to make this happen.
I mean, he just pretty much also addressed a lot of what people in the media have been saying and what, we see people on social media saying. He's saying, look, there's no there's no gotcha moment. You don't have to have Game Pass on Sony doesn't need to allow Game Pass on COD on PlayStation to get COD still. And actually, this same interview, he actually said that more important to them is Candy Crush and mobile.
We've been telling people that.
Which we talked about in the show, that the big play here is mobile. That. Yeah, this opens up a lot of doors, and that's potentially the big growth potential, I think, too, for Game Pass. It's getting that mobile crowd. So, but yeah, I just wanted to touch upon that quickly because that's something that Phil Spencer recent interview with The Verge, where he discussed that. Yeah, I think at this point, for me, and I think we discussed this last week. I just want this deal to be over with. Just get it done.
I'm with you, bro.
And that video, Phil, that video seemed a little bit like, okay, guys, I'm done talking about this. He's like, look, it's almost like he's like, I don't know else how to say this. We're not looking to take COD away. Game Pass doesn't need to be on PlayStation. Let me see something here because I feel like he added something else to this. He said we're committed to continue to ship Call of Duty on PlayStation. We're committed to putting these games in Game Pass, which give people more options and how they want to play games. Nobody has presented to me a case that shows how Game Pass is bad for customers.
Yeah, he right about that. I will give him that part. I think the thing is they have gotten to the point where, because I think what happens is in the beginning of this whole scenario, the conversation was based in, just talking to their fans, the community, talking to the people in the gaming industry about what they wanted to do with Activision. But then once it gets to a wider scope, when it comes to the world and all these different saying, everybody just looking at it and stuff, and then them putting all that stuff together, I think they got to the point now where we just want to be, well, this is what our intentions are. These are our true intentions. We always said that the big play was of the ABK. K was the major thing that they really, really wanted, and they would sacrifice Call of Duty to get that. And I think that was, I think that's kind of where he's finally getting to that point where he just said, listen, we don't really care if you play on a PlayStation. And I think people really thought that Phil Spencer was pulling the wool over their eyes when he kept saying, we just want people to play games as many places they want. Now, I do think when there's certain scenarios where it pops up where PlayStation would want something like Call of Duty. If they're going to put it in Game Pass on the Xbox, they want to be able to like have the option to put it on, PlayStation Premium and stuff like that. I think that is definitely not going to happen because I'm not literally paying all this money, $70 billion, to let you do something that I'm doing over here. That's the benefit of me owning it. Now, if you want to, fight on other grounds, absolutely. So I do think Microsoft is fighting on that regard, because I think that's the only thing that they really truly care about when it comes to the games. People always talk about, why doesn't Xbox go out and get these third-party deals and stuff like Sony does? Well, we've been telling people for the last 2-3 years, if you're not putting your game in Game Pass, they don't care. They want the game to be in that. It could be in there for 6 months. It could be in there for 3 months. It could be in there for a year. They just want it to launch inside of that service because that is a benefit to them to bring more people into that ecosystem. And just the $2 to $3 million that they can offer a company to just get exclusive marketing rights to the game, they don't feel like that does anything for them anymore, because they feel like the true thing is an engagement. And the only way you're going to get engagement on your platform like that is if you have something that nobody else has. And if they want it to be like that, that's what they want those games to kind of, they want that kind of to sit like that with those games. So that's what they're really fighting for. They want Game Pass to have an influx of content. ABK can bring that, but they're not going to sacrifice, the K in that to basically say, we want these games only on our platform. And that's what you're starting to see Phil Spencer say consistently more and more and more.
Yeah, one of the other things he said, too, is I understand the optics of this deal that we might want to make, and I'm totally open to doing this, a contractual commitment to Sony for some number of years that says, okay, we're going to continue to ship Call of Duty on PlayStation. He says, I'm totally open to that. No issue at all. He goes, this idea that we're going to write a contract that says forever doesn't make sense to any lawyer. There's obviously business relationship between the royalty exchanges and other things. You're not going to give up any ability to do what you need to do and the flexibility with the business in the future. So that was kind of an interesting point too that Phil Spencer made. Hamp, any thoughts on this before we wrap up the show?
Nope. I was just going to mention that point you mentioned at the end that I think, as you and I both felt, you could see the kind of the exasperation in his face and hear it in his voice during that interview. That
you really can't see it. He's kind of like, oh my God, like come on, like how else can we say it? Yeah.
Yeah, right. He's tired of some of the repetitive questions and some of the, like we've been saying, a lot of the conspiracy theories and the, running some, wild wackadoodle flat earther perspective out 50 miles out to sea and standing on it as if it's a reality. So he tried to, diffuse a lot of that stuff. But I think the most critical thing was the thing that you just mentioned, which was look, by the same token, right, we're also not going to spend $70 billion to sign away Call of Duty being on PlayStation in perpetuity. Like, that makes absolute zero business, contractual, legal sense. And so that's not something we're going to capitulate to or say or give anybody a false impression that that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So, I appreciate, to me, I mean, look, everybody chooses their personalities, and we have some people who feel like, things that Spencer says are false. And I think I've seen people looking for eye ticks and, trying to do, break down on his behaviors the same way that you do with presidential candidates when they're on screen to tell whether or not they're telling the truth. All of a sudden we're forensics experts now on people's interview behavior. That's just ridiculous. I appreciate the way Spencer always puts things in terms of, representing the positive things that I think he really believes that, things that they're doing at Microsoft and Xbox, the way that they're positive for gamers and the gaming market, but also truing that up with the reality, right? Of, look, we want to give as many people access to COD as possible. We want to keep it that way. But by the same token, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm going to, sign our life away for COD, just to ameliorate, fans and keep people calm down. I'm going to, and he always frames it in that realistic perspective. So I always appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no. I go back to kind of his facial expression, and they're like, hey, there's nothing behind my back here, and I mean, like, I thought it was a interesting interview. I thought it was, look, I saw some people say, oh, Phil's lying. I don't know how you could come to that conclusion. Like, I mean, I think, like they keep saying like, hey, we're not taking off PlayStation. Like, and you could see, he's like, he's basically, I don't know how else I can say it, and so, and look, there is a business case to be made for them to keep, that benefits them to keep COD on PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I agree with that.
I'm sure that we'll see the YouTuber frame by frame analysis of Spencer's facial expressions and tics over the next few days as a matter of proving that he is lying.
Yeah, he twitched here.
He twitched. Y'all silly.
You see that sudden movement? He's lying.
See the way he breaks eye contact in this frame right here?
He stuttered. He's lying.
He's thinking of something. He's thinking of the next lie.
He's thinking of the next lie, yeah.
I don't know, man. I just want this to be over with, man. That's part of the reason why I don't even converse on this kind of stuff anymore. It's like a company has the ability to go out and spend money and buy an asset that will benefit them, but yet we're just tearing them down because we feel like they're going to treat it terrible, or they're going to have a monopoly on it. And I'm sitting there like, man, you're still going to be able to play this game wherever you want to play it at. It's just going to have a different ownership. Like I didn't bat an eye when Bungie got bought by PlayStation. I just said, oh, I guess I'll be playing Destiny on PlayStation. And then Bungie did the great thing by saying, no, our stuff's staying everywhere. And I was like, oh, that's more power than I ever seen a developer have over their overseer. And I was like, interesting, but still didn't change the fact, if it didn't happen, I would have been playing Destiny on PlayStation and would have just been fine. Would have been fine with it. No problems at all. And I think people just don't want to see Microsoft have that type of power when it comes to having one of the most highly successful franchises in their control.
So I do.
Go ahead.
So I do want to mention one other thing that came out of this interview was the fact that Xbox Keystone, which was their streaming box, that they shelved plans for that because they could not get the price down below $299. They felt that was butting up too much against the Xbox Series S and would cannibalize sales of that. Also, that would put it competitively at the same price as the Nintendo Switch. Both of those consoles, can play at least digital games, locally on hardware. So, and obviously, Switch can do it with the little cards or whatever. So, what he talked about was that, he wants to get the price for that thing down to $129 or $99. So basically kind of, Roku / Fire Stick kind of prices,
territory
before they launch it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I did see that $129, $100. Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, I
ain't nobody gonna spend more than that on the streaming device
because that's where those. I mean, that's where those is, like you said, the Roku Hamp are kind of pricing that price range. So, we have the chat. The chat is perked up. See what you started, Forte?
Let's see. Forte is not that Microsoft has that power. It's more of they have to handle things like Rare. Rare is one of the best studios. When they made games for Nintendo, then Microsoft bought them. Listen, man, let's talk about, let's have a harsh reality talk about Rare. The Rare that you remember back in the 80s and the 90s is nowhere near the Rare that it is today. And we all know that. You want to know why? Because when Rare got bought out, the people that worked at Rare under Nintendo weren't there then. Rare hasn't been the same since Microsoft purchased them. So people thinking that Microsoft ruined Rare, it's not that they ruined. Now, did they mismanage? I feel like the way that they did development for the games and stuff, I felt like they could have did a lot better with that. But they didn't ruin Rare. Rare, the people that were the people that made all of those games that we loved at Rare when they were under Nintendo or with Nintendo or doing stuff for Nintendo, those people didn't come along for the ride. And the people that did come along for the ride didn't stay around long enough because they just wanted to do other things. They didn't want to be owned by a bigger corporation. They liked their independence that they had when they were working with Nintendo, making the games and licensing the stuff that they were making for Nintendo. I think those people wanted to move on and do other things. So it's not that Microsoft killed Rare. Those people just didn't want to be at Rare no more. And I think that's the disconnect that people keep forgetting about it. They could do better with Rare, absolutely, because we think they should be able to do better with it, but it's not Microsoft's only fault. It's the people leave, and it happens all the time.
You know, I don't, and this is kind of the talking point that comes up that quite a bit when we start talking about this acquisition. I don't disagree that Microsoft or that Xbox has had issues with product management. More specific to game development.
Right.
But if we look at how they're handling, and this seems to be the case from what I understand with Activision, it's still going to pretty much Activision is still going to be Activision, right? They're not going to, it's not like a Rare type situation. It's going to be very similar to what you see with, ZeniMax Media, Bethesda.
Yeah,
like
Bethesda,
I mean,
ZeniMax.
Yeah, like, you know, like you have Pete Hines there, you have Todd Howard. You know, those are that's leadership right there at Bethesda. They report to Phil. My understanding, this is going to be the same case with Activision. Now, that's not to say that I think it's fair to ask a question like how would they manage this? Like, this is a huge undertaking in the industry that no one's done.
Right.
I don't think it's unfair to say that, you know, or to ask the question, will they be able to manage this and have some conversation around that? But I'm also not going to sit there and say Activision is going to be ruined because of Microsoft. Like I'm not arriving to that conclusion.
Right. And I think just like Reggie just said, he said, Forte, how come Nintendo and Sony don't have these problems when buying devs? It's not that they don't have problems. I just feel like they have a clear vision. First of all, Nintendo Studios, outside of the very, very few that people know the names of, because most people do, like, that's the thing. Most people don't even know 90% of what any of the devs for Nintendo. They just know Nintendo games. They don't know who makes them. I mean, the real dedicated people do. But all they do is think about just the games. Can someone tell me in the chat who's making making Tears of the Kingdom? So good amount of y'all probably don't know what the name of the dev is. But when it comes to Sony puts their developers' names out there all the time. Their developers are very, very influential with social media. Look at Cory Barlog. He's always on Twitter talking about stuff, and they make great games. So Xbox had a very, very serious problem in developing games from 2008, and all the way up to like 2016, 2017. They're still having issues. They're getting better at it. But the fact that they went from having double-digit studios back in 2007 to literally having 3 or 4 in 2017 before they made these mass purchases, it should tell you right in and there that the gaming was not the priority. Like, it was the priority for the Xbox brand, but it wasn't a priority for Microsoft. And then it's finally a priority now. That's why you see all of this money being spent. That's why you see, you know, them coming out and saying that Bethesda's going to have its own leadership team when it comes to what happens at Bethesda. They're going to self-police themselves. They're still going to answer to what Phil has to say. But when it comes to the day-to-day operations, Nothing has changed. And some people will sit here and tell you that's why Microsoft is kind of failing, because with all the other studios, they're doing the same thing. So the developers love it, but gamers hate it because they're not putting their foot to the fire. And we always hear about that one incident that happened when Shuhei went in and he saw the game and he was like, oh, no, this ain't going to work. We're not saying, I mean, you know, that happened in that regard. It's not saying that that doesn't happen at Xbox games. It just doesn't seem like it happens because we keep getting these misses on the games and stuff like that. So we can't compare Microsoft to what PlayStation has built over 25 years. Xbox has literally just started doing this 5 years ago. That's literally 25% of the way, not even 25%, 20% of the way to what PlayStation has built over 2.5 decades of excellence. And PlayStation's been doing it longer. So we can't really, I mean, you can want more, but the Xbox that we have now is drastically different from 2017. And all we can do, it sucks that we're waiting for the games, but no one can deny that they're doing better. And that's all you can ask them to do. Now they just need to put the games out.
Yeah. Hamp, any thoughts on this, man, before we wrap up?
Yeah, you know, my hope is that when this whole merger goes down, that you know, Kotick gets his golden parachute and is sent along his way. Right. It would be nice if he didn't get a golden parachute, but you know, look, corporate structures are what they are, deals are what they are, C-level officers are protected the way that they are. That's not going to change miraculously in a year. So I expect he'll get his walking money. I would like to see Johanna Fares named as CEO of that division, and have her take over the helm for Activision. You know, as I've mentioned before earlier this year, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes down. I understand why Microsoft wants to do things this way. I understand that they're trying to skate against their culture. I think Forte brought up excellent points. You know, Microsoft acquired Rare in 2002. That was a radically different Xbox. That was a radically different Microsoft. Yeah. Leadership has changed at the corporate level. Leadership has changed at the Xbox level. And so, you know, what's going on now isn't what went on before. I understand that they want to allow for creative freedom within the studios. As I mentioned before, I think you have to figure out a way to allow both creative freedom, but also have production governance, because in my mind, you cannot run something like a Game Pass, a subscription service that has a dependency on regularly delivered content, and allow a production pipeline that flexes and ebbs and flows around ambiguous deadlines and requirements, and still run a predictive deterministic subscription service. I don't think that that business model does not couple with that management and leadership style. And so in my mind, something's got to give. You know, you can mitigate that by having more studios than the absolute minimum that you need to maintain that production pipeline, which is what they're doing, because they don't. 33 studios exceeds the quantitative number that they would have to rig a production pipeline that delivered that one AAA game per quarter. That gives them a little overage, which they need to have because they need to have redundancy for studios that are going to miss their dates. But they have to do something, in my mind, about you know, lining out a roadmap, establishing who's going when, taking what is kind of the Activision model and kind of expanding it and rippling it across the other studios so that you now have a more predictable pipeline of, you know, what game's going to come out and what game's going to be the marquee game for that quarter that goes into Game Pass. So that I think they've got to tighten up and shift the management style on, regardless of who reports to who. To be quite honest, I mean, if I were Matt Booty, I would have a little bit of a problem with the way things are kind of rigged right now. And again, I don't know that Matt Booty's the guy, but whoever the guy is or girl, I would have a problem with me being accountable for 100% of the pipeline, but not having control over studios or structures that report directly to Phil. right?
That's a good point.
Because I just use a very basic ass chewing metric, right, in my approach to company leadership. And it's, look, if you're allowed to chew my ass about a thing, then I get control over it, plain and simple, right? I get to run it. And so things are a little lopsided from that perspective for me. So it'll just be interesting to see how it turns out.
You know, the funny thing about that, though, you're right. But I think since we haven't really seen any real releases under Bethesda yet, and the Activision stuff hasn't even gone through yet, I think people are just, like you said, wondering if Booty is up to the task, because he is over Xbox Game Studios, and everything outside of Bethesda and ZeniMax is under him. So that's kind of where people are like, okay, so what's going on with all of these other studios, the ones that you are over? Like, what's been going on with the Initiative? What's going on with Fable? And when are we going to see? I think we're going to see gameplay for Hellblade at the Game Awards, because that's like where they always show it at. So I think, you know, he's on the clock for the things that's been brewing since 2017, and they made those acquisitions, and they only had a couple. And granted, they had a lot of games that released over the course of that first year that they had nothing to do with. So now all those studios are like in a standby mode for their next game to come out, which you really can't hold him at fault for. But I think people just want to see these next tier games coming out. They want to know, is the next Forza Motorsport, what is that going to be like? What is Fable going to look like? When are we going to hear anything about, you know, Perfect Dark? What is that going to be like? And all of those games are underneath him, and he does have 100% control over what happens at those studios. And I think that's what people want to know, like, what's up with that?
But that's kind of my thing, right? You know, my for instance, and where I would be cranky is, you know, let me just kind of put it in the terms that I would be thinking about it, right? Is, look, Todd Howard gets to run around and run his mouth and claim that he's going to have Starfield out, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And then he just gets to miss. He just gets to miss, right? And what that causes is now I'm on the hook, right, for having content available in Game Pass. I'd be like, well, Phil, let me just be like, what the fuck is that?
That's
like, how is that fair?
That's
like, no, like, look, if you guys are supposed to deliver, you guys are supposed to deliver. And if you're behind schedule, you need to figure something out, because you're not going to leave me holding the ball, right? Oh, well, you know, we're all a team and we're all one Microsoft. F that. Right?
I'm with you on that.
If Game Pass needs to have a stocked pipeline, it needs to have a stocked pipeline. And if look, I'm not going to be the guy left, right, to have to scramble and jump through my ass to figure something out because somebody made a decision and a claim. Like I said, my thing with Todd Howard is it wasn't just that he claimed that the game was going to be out then. He jumped up and down on the table, on the desk, right, ran laps around the office, spiked the football, set a trash can on fire, right, and said he was going to have the game out, right, and they didn't. And it was very just casually dismissive, like, oh, well, you know, we're going to delay it to next year. Right, which caused that entire division to have to do a big mea culpa and rearrange their whole approach to PR and marketing. That's why you got here's the next 12 months, right? Which was a radically different shift in the soundtrack that was coming from that division and their approach to the platform, right? And that would just kind of be my problem. And maybe my problem from the Phil side would be, you know, if Matt Booty's not the person who I can entrust to ride herd over everyone, including Bethesda and Activision, then maybe I need to find that person, right? Because I don't know that, you know, me as the CEO of Microsoft Games, you know, needs to be doing that. So that's just kind of my you know, my concern. And then, you know, the other point I'll bring up is, and I know Forte, you were saying, you know, the developers love the hands-off approach, right? But, you know, I think part of the ripples that we're also seeing is there are points where that is good for creative freedom, but then we've heard reports that there are some studios who suffer that, right, where the entirely hands-off approach, meaning that there's no governance, is problematic. When you look at something like The Initiative, and you look at something like, I always forget the name of the studio, but the studio
343.
Well, not just 343, but it's the studio down south that does one of the
Coalition.
the undead games. No, not the Coalition, but it's the one that they acquired. Where like Undead Labs, yes, where once they acquired it, like the CEO and his wife just jetted and were like down in the Bahamas or whatever, ostensibly running the studio in air quotes, but them running the studio was like literally like, answering an email like once every couple of weeks, so and nobody was kind of clearly in charge, and the studio culture started to deteriorate, right? So some of that hands-off approach is fine, but some of it is also hurtful. And again, that then results in a studio that you can't rely on if its game is supposed to be the Game Pass game in Q3 of 2023, right? And that's where I say you can't. I've had to say it a couple times this week. At work, like you cannot have ambiguous requirements. Well, you can't have specific requirements and give ambiguous guidance, right? So you can't be stringing together a subscription service that's relied on predictive output and then have a kind of loose, willy-nilly, laissez-faire management and leadership structure because you can't drive results out of an environment like that.
Good point.
Yeah, that's a great point, Hamp. Look, on that note, Hamp, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the show.
That's kind of war.
Hey, I might have to go. I might have to go to bed.
Woman,
yeah,
bed.
Yeah.
But
no,
I get you.
Yeah. But look, I want to give a big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us this evening. Really appreciate the support. As always, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button if you haven't done so already. And maybe a BRAP rant this weekend. Probably will be a BRAP rant this weekend. I haven't done one in a while. So, but no, seriously, thank you, everyone, for listening. And again, consider subscribing, hit the bell notifications so you're alerted when we go live. And again, hit that like button. But Forte, always a pleasure, sir. Show tomorrow, right?
Yeah, tomorrow, 9 p.m., Slumbo Backslash channel, DPS podcast. It's going to be an amazing time. I'm going to do a lot of talking about the Game Awards stuff again and whatever else Slumbo has on the docket. A couple of things I'm going to leave for a surprise for tomorrow, but it's going to be great. Make sure you come through. From myself, Gaming Forte, YouTube, Twitter, Xbox Live, PlayStation. Come check me out. And it's great to be here. I was happy to get off work early enough to make it to the show today because I know BRAP is sitting there like, Forte, where you been? And I'm here. So I missed you guys. And yeah, have a good weekend.
No, it was great having you back, Forte. And I appreciate it, man. And then Hamp. Let me know they can find you, man.
Hamp Lee.
Yeah, you're welcome to tune in to the Enough to Keep Going Weekly Games podcast on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, 8:45 p.m.-ish on Sunday nights, 8:45 p.m.-ish Eastern. We talk about news, we talk about gameplay of the games that we're playing right now. We try and keep the gas pedal off of the drama, gossip, and rumor. And just talk about the news, but we get into it as deeply as we do here. So feel free to swing by.
Absolutely, no doubt. But all right, everyone, enjoy the rest of the week. Remember, have fun playing video games. That's what it's about. Having fun. F-U-N. Fun. So we'll catch you next time. Give me a follow on the Twitters at BRAP_podcast. And yeah, we'll catch you next time. Thank you.
Peace outside.